The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, greetings from Minneapolis. Come to your cordless, everybody. It's Tuesday night, September 9th, 2025. I am Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night, episode number 273. Mark your cards at home. Someday there will be a test. All right, I look like crap. Who are we kidding? My hair, I need a haircut about 2 weeks ago. I'm getting one tomorrow. Brittany's going to cut my hair. That's Brittany Shears, the famous Brittany Shears of Minneapolis. She's cutting my hair tomorrow. And I'm not going to be here tomorrow. And let's go through that. Tonight, our guests, the guys from the Ukraine show, Jonathan Lockwood, Ivan Kucherenko, and Sasha Starr. Now, this is a podcast these guys have been doing for, I think, 3 years now, maybe even longer. So they told me on the show today, we taped this afternoon, and there's a reason we did that specifically, too. We've been taping more and more of our interviews, but in this case, it's because we had 4 guys on the screen from 3 different countries simultaneously, and that worked. The inner tube actually works. God bless Al Gore for coming up with all this stuff. He's so bright, you know. So anyway, they were saying that they actually started the show before the war started. It actually was the original concept of this show was not to revolve around any sort of war, but then the war started. So they've been at it ever since. The reason they get so much buzz and the reason the show is unique in the podcast sphere is that Ivan Kucherenko is actually in Ukraine. He broadcasts from Ukraine, and they're unique in that respect. And so they get the firsthand skivvy on everything that's going on as far as the battle is concerned. Ivan's actually in Kiev. He was talking about that. You'll find this fascinating. I'll be perfectly honest. This was way more, and they're going to hate me for saying this. It was way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. It really was. So, for broadcasting, for taking feeds out of 3 countries simultaneously, technically it worked out pretty well. You notice there's a few sound problems, a little bit. Nothing major, though. Nothing major at all. You'll be able to follow along. Tomorrow night, it's Wednesday, right? Yeah, tomorrow night's Wednesday. I'm off. I'm going to go. My mother's 101 years old, and she's just moved into a assisted living facility. They're having their fall festival, and she has to run around and kick some ass and take some names, and she does. Trust me. She's the oldest person in the building. And she complains about the fact none of these old people want to do anything. It's really actually pretty funny. Mom, you're the old one. No, not in her mind. They're all old. What the hell's going on here? That's tomorrow night. Tomorrow I'm taking off. We're going to run a rerun. We're going to run Wayne Morrow from last week, from the previous Wednesday. He was a pretty interesting guy. Him and I really kind of hit it off. Pretty cool. He's the CEO of the John Birch Society with Jets. Yes, still exists, if you're wondering. I had an old friend of mine who said, I mentioned I was interviewing this guy, said, they still around? Yeah, they've been around since 1958, and they've never left up. So, yeah, so we're going to talk to you. That's tomorrow night, rerunning from last week. And Thursday, our old friend, the former executive editor of Hustler magazine, Tim Conaway, is going to join us. He will regale us of stories of publishing in LA in the 1980s. You know, now, if you were watching the show last night, we had a great show last night. John Mason was on, entertainment attorney extraordinaire. Of course, he spent most of his career in LA, and unfortunately, he said a lot of people died from drugs that he knew. But I don't think Tim had that problem. I don't think he did. So maybe a little drinking. but Yeah. So okay. So that's our week here. I don't know what's coming up. I'll be honest. I don't know what's coming up on Monday. I don't. I don't think we have Monday booked yet. I don't. I know that we have one of the 4 nights next week booked. I've been playing around with TikTok a lot, so I spent about 90 minutes last night just scrolling through the live feeds. I got time, and it's in the middle of the night. I mean, it's 2:30 in the morning. Yeah, I stay up pretty late. I do. I can't sleep after doing this. We do this live. It is actually right now 9:05 p.m. Eastern time in the United States, and so I'm scrolling. We're I have a plan. First of all, we're going to put the show on TikTok, but the problem with that is right now I was actually mistaken about this. I'd been told that TikTok had relieved their time restriction for live shows. That's not true. They haven't. So you can only go an hour. So we're going to broadcast live on TikTok, but you'll only see the first hour of the show. And generally, these shows are about 90 minutes. So literally, the feed will just cut off after 60. But I think my plan for quite a while is we're going to do a TikTok only show, maybe 1 or 2 Fridays a month. Maybe not every Friday, maybe every other Friday. We'll see how it works out because it's kind of wild. I have to say, I totally understand why people get addicted to this. And the people who thought of this, it's unlike any other social network I've ever seen, and anyone else has ever seen either. It's talking about a dopamine hit. Holy Christ! Anyway, I had a good time just scrolling around and trolling people. Yeah, I did that. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. So this woman, I gotta relate this. She's doing games on her live feed, and so they're doing Hangman, and so this is the game. 4 letters. CU blank blank. Now, and I texted, "You're trying to get me kicked off of here. I just can't resist." What the hell? What is she thinking? And the thing is, it appeared she did a really good job. It appeared that she didn't know what I was talking about. Okay, all right, honey, thank you. And yeah, I said, honey, I did. All right, well, enough of me about me. Well, let's put the guys from the Crane Show on. I tell you what, you'll see them in 12 seconds. Here we go. All right, here's the guys from the Ukraine show. First of all, the show's actually called Ukraine, Russia, China, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. All right, so you can follow. I'm here, right here, and to my right, that's Jonathan Lockwood. He's been on the show before. He's basically our military expert. Below him is Ivan Kucherenko. I'm sorry, Kucherenko. Excuse me. That's Ivan, and immediately below me is Sasha Starr. Now, the reason this show is so cool and getting so much attention is because Ivan's actually in Ukraine, and he is this very moment too. So, Ivan, what's that like? I mean, you live in an apartment building? Where do you live?
Yeah,
Don't get too exact.
I'm in Kiev. Hopefully not. No, Kiev now it's is far from the battlefield actually, because the major offensive war is on the east on Donbass, and it's like 700 kilometers from Kiev to the battlefield. But Russia constantly strikes Kiev with the drones, with the missiles. We had a pretty major Russian attack on September 7th at night when Russia launched more than 800 drones over Ukraine, and it was a little bit terrifying in Kiev when the Ukrainian aircraft defense tried to shoot down all those drones, and they were falling, and unfortunately not all of them were shot down.
I believe it. I think that's the one thing. Americans have never been in a war zone. My 100-year-old mother, she lived through World War II. I've heard a lot about it, but I mean, it's like we kind of take it for granted. I think it's Sasha, you are Ukrainian, if I'm right, but you're living in Toronto right now, correct?
No, that's correct. I was born in Odessa, Ukraine. I served in at that time Soviet Army. and I moved to Canada in 1975. And if you want to hear more about my achievements, I think we have time limitations for that, but I just mentioned the most important things. By education and by my first years in Canada, I was a concert pianist. Then I turned to investments, and still doing that now quite actively. And one of my other shows on this network, Pod TV, is investment show by the name Modern Investing.
Oh,
Shortly before the war, or this phase of war, 1922 in Ukraine, I started this show, Ukraine, Russia, China, because at that time I thought that all three are very important pieces of the puzzle. But lately, of course, we concentrate on Ukraine, very little on Russia and China. And so that shows, so it may change its configuration, depends on what the future is, whether it will be a peace settlement, which I don't believe it will be, or Ukraine will prevail and actually win this war against Russia, which I do believe quite strongly. And but we'll see what's happened.
so did I hear that right? Did you say you started the show actually before the war started?
Correct. Because if I would start it after the war started, I wouldn't bring Russia and China. I would concentrate on Ukraine only.
Uh-huh. Interesting. And Jonathan, you've been floating around here for a while.
Well, let's see. Actually, my association with the Ukraine-Russia-China show started in August of 2022, at the invitation of my of the co-founder Nick Palavita, who is also a former. We go back all the way to high school together, and he had kept in touch with me all during those years, and he knew of my reputation and my publications and so forth. And matter of fact, he was at my graduation when I was awarded my PhD in International Affairs, Soviet Area Studies. And so he invited me to be a part of the Ukraine-Russia-China show, which I gladly accepted. And then the association has given me a lot of good practice. It has compelled me to keep up with developments, give me more incentive than most people to keep up with the developments in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian wars, and the factors which affect it. And I share Sasha's opinion and conviction that Ukraine is going to emerge victorious from this current Russian-Ukrainian war. Indeed, it is the only realistic path for Ukraine forward. There can be no negotiated peace. You have two nations with politically irreconcilable objectives. Russia does not want Ukraine to exist. Ukraine wants nothing to do with Russia. They want to be independent of Russia. They want them to stay out of Ukrainian affairs. And if they had their way, if Ukraine had its way completely, it would also be not only part of the European Union, but also a member of NATO. Right now, that is, in the short term, still somewhat impractical due to various political considerations, but certainly within Ukraine's reach is a sufficient enough military victory that basically forces the Russians to, either basically declare victory and go home, and basically withdraw from Ukraine. That would be Ukraine's maximum goal. Russia has its maximum goals in this war. Well, so does Ukraine. And both are absolutely irreconcilable. Diplomacy will not solve the problem.
So, Sasha, do you generally, just very, very quickly, do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I do agree with this assessment. I want to just take a few minutes to go why Russia is so different from Ukraine and vice versa. Ukraine historically was a part of Western civilization. Hundreds of years ago, it was part of a Commonwealth of Lithuania and Poland, and Ukraine was part of it. And Russia was a part of Asia. It was overrun by Mongols and Tatars, and even until today, it still has all characteristic of a despot Asian, almost a Genghis Khan-like country. Although Russians, most of the Russians, of course, not all, they look pretty well like Europeans, but in mentality, in its history, they are not. It's an Asian country, absolutely hostile to anything Western, whether it's United States or Europe or Ukraine, and they want to keep Ukraine in its hold, because if Ukraine would join European Union, NATO in a few years, it would be completely westernized country. That what Russians cannot stomach.
Ivan, you're there. Do you agree with this assessment too?
Yeah, I agree, but I just want to add something to what Jonathan said, that victory of Ukraine is the only way for Ukraine. No, Jonathan, victory of Ukraine in this war is the only way for the Western world, because opposite to victory of Ukraine is defeat of Ukraine, and defeat of Ukraine in this war means that Russia or any other countries can achieve their goals using the military way, using the such methods, such barbaric methods of war and terroristic methods of war, when they attack civilian infrastructure, attack cities in order to make a country actually surrender. Russia now is not able to achieve a significant advantage on the battlefield. In August, Ukrainian army claimed back more territories than Russia actually could grab in their offensive operations, and Russia turned back to what they do pretty well by terrorizing peaceful Ukrainian cities in order to make Ukrainian people demand ceasefire, demand capitulation from the government, to say that, okay, we will accept all Putin's crazy requirements of Ukrainian capitulation, but they will not be successful in it. So it's not when someone says that it's a matter of Ukraine. No, it's not a matter of Ukraine. It's a matter of every civilized country of the Western world, because Russia broke the actually all peace guarantees, all peace efforts which were established in the world after the Second World War. They've started the major war on the European continent since the World War II, and they've used in Ukraine, they've attacked Ukraine using all way of conventional weapons except of nuclear ones. They are using rockets, they're using strategic bombers, they are using their Black Sea fleet, which actually is withdrawn from Crimea due to Ukrainian drones. They commit numerous atrocities, which world have discovered after the Russian forces were kicked off the Kiev region, from Bucha, from Kharkiv region, from Izium, and we've seen all those graveyards where they've killed civilians, the torture chambers, but they're not considering that they're doing this war in the modern civilized world, when every their atrocity is being recorded via cameras. In Bucha, there were dozens of cameras which recorded everything that Russia did there. There were mobile phones recording that. There were a lot of people who were liberated and confirmed Russian atrocities to not only to the Ukrainian prosecutors or crime prosecutors, but also to the United Nations representative, to European representative, to the American representatives. Everyone said what Russia did in Bucha, and that confirms what Sasha said. They're not a part of the civilized culture. They actually trying to imitate that they're a culture country, which started from the Peter the Great, who actually tried to move Russia towards the Europe. But their deeds, which are covered by Russian culture, actually says that they're completely barbaric state, which is closer to the Asian civilization, because they're not accepting the modern rules. They are not accepting the modern way of war. Now Russia is breaking all the treaties, like Treaty of no tortures during the war. They're just breaking it and leaving that treaty, saying, okay, we will fight other nations, we will commit our war, and we will torture people. We are not anymore participant of that treaty. So,
all right,
yeah.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a second, because I don't know squat, and I'm sitting here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and like most people in America, I don't know squat. Maybe the only difference is I know I don't. The conventional thinking is that eventually Russia would win, just because they would be able to outlast Ukraine in terms of people, soldiers, and resources. So you guys are basically, all three of you are basically countering that.
Pretty much.
Uh-huh. No, I understand. I do understand the thing about you're right. It's like, it's basically it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a binary thing. Either Russia wins or the Ukraine wins. I agree. There's but what about the current situation where it appears that the Trump administration is trying to broker a peace deal where Russia keeps what they've already conquered, which is basically about 10% of the eastern part of Ukraine, and call it a day, and that's not going to fly? Is that what you guys think?
We don't think it's going to fly, because right now Russia has demonstrated that they are not interested in diplomacy or even a partial solution or a partial victory. What their actions and their words have demonstrated is that they are interested in the eventual total conquest of Ukraine, and they have made the number of people in the Russian government have made statements indicating that they have objectives beyond the conquest of Ukraine. They want to reestablish the Russian Empire.
Yeah.
That establishment would basically include a rollback of NATO borders and NATO nations back to at least the pre-1991 borders.
Right.
The end of the Cold War. That's what Putin would like to see, because Putin had made the statement that he considered the collapse of the Soviet Union during the 20th century to being the largest geopolitical disaster of the 20th century.
Yeah, and
that says a lot about what his attitude is.
So the conventional wisdom on that is that, but this is the first step. Ukraine is the first step in basically recreating the Soviet state, correct?
Right.
Ukraine was the second most largest republic in so-called Soviet Union, and what is mostly important, that Ukraine was a major part of the Soviet military industry. Russian military industry is not complete without the Ukraine, because in Kharkiv, for instance, there were produced equipment, engines for the tanks, and engines for the aircrafts. Now Russia cannot produce them. That's why they are so poor in tanks on the battlefield. In Dnipro, former Dnipropetrovsk, was the largest rocket factory, which actually produced ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. And Russia now, they are pretty weak in ICBMs. They are not successful in testing their ICBMs, and their goal is to claim back the Dnipro in order to restore its power. A lot of factories are in Kiev as well. When Russia captured Donetsk in Luhansk in 2014, after the annexation of Crimea, they actually stole the equipment in Donetsk factory, which was producing Kolchuga air defense systems, and those systems, which they stolen in 2014, became a core of their air defense Panzer system and their electronic warfare system. That's why now Russia is so powerful on the battlefield with electronic warfares, because they've managed to restore that piece of old Soviet weapons manufacturing when they've captured Donetsk in 2014. And there are numerous of examples, and it's also about the resources, because Ukraine is rich in resources, especially in Donbas region, and it was a point of mineral deal between the Ukraine and the United States, and Russia is grabbing Ukrainian resources as well. So like Jonathan and Sasha are saying, Russia doesn't need any specific part of Ukraine. They need all Ukraine, and they want to conquer as much of as possible of Ukraine in military way, and then establish their puppet government in Kyiv, if possible, by committing hybrid attacks like they were doing before that, influencing the electoral process in order to put a pro-Russian government in Kyiv and make Ukraine a satellite of Russia, like is Belarus.
So, gentlemen, is Trump, Sasha, I'll ask you specifically, is Trump basically blowing smoke up his own butt, as we like to say in America? I mean, is he fooling himself here that there could be in a negotiation? I mean, you guys seem to be, and your logic is increasingly compelling about the fact that basically he wants the whole thing. So, if that's the case, is he just stringing Trump along?
Well, I could say only this, that before you start negotiations with Russia, you should understand their motivation, their power, their weaknesses, and have a whole package available to you. Trump is, by his background, he's a real estate guy, not a politician.
Right.
And real estate, it's a zero-sum game. Let's see, you want to buy a piece of property from somebody else, so you collect information about your opponent weaknesses and strengths and so on, and you start playing games, how to weaken him out until he will say, okay, it's all yours, take it, okay, I don't care anymore, or so on. Now, dealing with the country, it requires completely different skills, knowledge, experience, which Trump does not possess. For example, he is offering Putin some business deals, like developing Arctic or doing some gas or oil deals or something like this. He does not understand that Putin is by far the richest man in the world.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
Probably well over $1 trillion. So
right.
Why does he need to even listen to Trump's proposal? He's doing that because of the politeness, and so he says, oh yeah, that's great.
Well, there's another thing, Sasha, too, and I think I'm going to restate in different words what you're trying to say, and that is you're talking about Trump's real estate background as a businessman. Trump goes under the assumption, I think, that people will rationally act in their own self-interest. And the whole thing about this whole war is it's basically irrational. It's like Putin wants Ukraine, and Putin's going to get Ukraine. I don't think there's any rationality involved in this. I mean, all three of you have talked about the fact there's justifications for doing this in his mind, recreating the Soviet state, strategic, like Ivan was saying, maybe resources regarding military equipment, all sorts of stuff. But at the end of the day, I will ask all three of this: is Putin just nuts? Are we?
He would be. What the mistake that the Trump administration and a lot of Americans, as a matter of fact, make is they commit the error that we in the intelligence community have called mirror imaging, projecting our logic onto the opponent. We assume that rational actors are going to think the same way that we do.
Correct. Absolutely.
And there's plenty of evidence in regular life where other people don't necessarily see the situation the same way you do.
That's the very reason I brought this up. Now, once again, you're saying this better than I did, but But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm
But
trying to
because
say.
therefore, and the Trump administration is continually being surprised and frustrated by the fact that the Russian mentality and mindset is totally alien to their own mindset. To the Russians, for example, contracts and treaties are like eggshells made to be broken.
Yeah.
So, in which case, why are you even bothering to negotiate?
Well, in the Russian mind, let me ask you, taking a step further, in the Russian mind, are they still communists?
In the Russian mind, communism is irrelevant in this context.
Uh-huh.
The Russian mindset is that. Well, to give you an idea, former Russian President Boris Yeltsin, in a speech to the Russian Duma in 1994, stated, quote, "The only reason Russia is considered a great power is because its armed forces have nuclear weapons." That one statement all by itself tells you pretty much, how they regard nuclear weapons are to Russia much more important, relatively speaking, than they are to the United States. For us, having nuclear weapons is, that's a bonus. We would be a great power in various other respects other than just nuclear weapons. But for the Russians, nuclear weapons are their only claim to great power status. And as the war has demonstrated thus far, they do not have a world-class military. It is not a great power
by
military.
any means. No, they don't.
And matter of fact, as Sasha likes to say, that in the Russian-Ukrainian war, the Russians have the second most powerful army in the fight.
Well, no, but the thing is, that's true. When this started, everyone thought it was going to be over in two weeks, and here we are 4 years into this. And really, Ukraine is doing a really good job kicking Russia's ass. I mean, it's really pretty amazing, considering the fact that a country with less money, less people, and less resources, and even less military equipment has done a really good job defending themselves.
Ukraine actually is doing NATO's job, because NATO was prepared during all period of the war with the Soviet Union, actually, and Russia now plays the role of Soviet Union, and Ukraine is, thanks to the Western partners, of course, but by the very high price of the lives of Ukrainian soldiers, Ukraine now is demilitarizing Russia. The count of Russian losses in manpower, in weapons, in military equipment in this war, it's something. It's crazy that dozens. Soviet Union prepared during all time of its existence with war with the NATO countries. They manufactured and stockpiled tanks, artillery, bombs, all kind of weapons. And now what? Now Russia almost explicited all those stockpiles. Their all warehouses are 3/3 are empty. They are now have to buy artillery shells from Northern Korea, to buy some kind of rockets from Northern Korea, from Iran. Their own industry is not able to support the pace of this war, because despite the Ukrainians, which are using a lot of smart tactics on the Ukrainian forces on the battlefield, Russians are doing the war like they did during the Soviet time, but just by throwing a lot of manpower on the front and not considering any losses in manpower, and with a high.
Is there any chance that literally a serious chance that Russia could actually run out of money here?
Well, I can tell you one thing: the state of their logistics. Logistics, for our audience, logistics is the science of supply, being able to provide the means for waging war.
Right.
And the Russians historically have had a terrible logistics system. They have not been very good at all at supplying their troops, and particularly it was the case during the Second World War.
Yeah, Jonathan, did you tell me that, or somebody else told me that about the fact that during the Second World War they were using mules?
They're using horse-drawn wagons.
Yeah,
Mules now, they're using mules.
And they're using them now. Donkeys.
that's crazy. That's nuts.
Well, it's crazy, but it's true. The
2025.
Russians.
While Ukraine are using drones, heavy drones on the battlefield or the wheeled drones or track drones as a part of logistics to deliver the supplies to the trenches. Actually, Russians are using mules and they're using horses.
Unbelievable. And Ivan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've heard that you guys, the Ukrainians, are so good with the drones that you're actually showing the Americans actually how you're doing it, that instead of the other way around, right?
$50 billion that U.S. is going to supply Ukraine to share that experience with the drones. And remember one more thing, Ukraine is fighting 21st century war. Russia is fighting 19th, maybe 20th century war. This is why ultimately, in spite of shortage of manpower, Ukraine is doomed to win this war.
All right, so Ukraine wins, how long is it going to take?
Yeah, Ukraine actually now is the top one country in the drones, and the progress in them is developing so quickly. Like 3.5 years after the start of the full-scale invasion, the drones on the battlefield, they were mostly for reconnaissance. It were like wedding drones, those Mavics, which Ukrainian special forces or artillery forces, they've just used for reconnaissance. After that, the drones started to use like bombers when such drone can drop a shell actually and kill some Russian soldiers. After that, the kamikaze FPV drones appeared. Now it's a time of the land drones. Also sea drones, which was not a case just before the start of the full-scale invasion. Ukraine, using sea drones, managed to destroy the third part of the Russian Black Sea Fleet and made a Russian Black Sea Fleet actually flee far away from the Crimea, which was a naval base for the Russian Black Sea.
Well, I'm also wondering this too: if Russia is hell bent on winning, and let's say we get to a place, and Jonathan, you would know more about this than me, about where it's obvious that Russia has lost, right? Are they going to keep fighting anyway? I mean,
right now they're in a very extremely difficult. They can't afford to keep fighting. They can't afford to stop fighting either.
Yeah, right.
Because if they stop fighting, and then Putin is confronted with a whole bunch of returning Russian soldiers and the Russian population saying, "Okay, Vladimir, look what did your war get us?"
Right.
And he's very likely to lose power, if not his own life.
Yeah.
So he is stuck in a position where he must continue the war because some accounts say that he believes that he is winning, and he is delusional if he believes that. But that is not going to stop him from continuing the war for as long as he physically is alive and able to do so. So right now, it's just a very nasty situation that we have to accept the fact that diplomacy rarely solves problems. War it's an ugly solution. It's a nasty solution. It's not the preferred solution of many people, but guess what?
Well, you're right, Jonathan. That's one of my problems with Americans. They came to terms with the fact that wars are really ugly and fair because you got to do it.
War now is actually a peace for Russia. Like Orwell said, they cannot end this war because of what Jonathan said, and also they've turned their industry towards the military side, and their economy actually keeps on the two major points. It was a question about the money which Russia gets, continue that's the major part of Russian export, and it actually fuels the Russian economy. And the second part is that they're spending all those money, most of those money actually on their military industry, and with such recipe, actually their economy is not falling down, and in case the war will be ended, they just cannot quickly transfer their economy back to the peaceful state. They will have to continue this military production. Otherwise, Russian economy actually may collapse. So for now, continuing this war is the only way for Russia.
All right, so I have to now. I want to do an alternate scenario. Going into these, let's assume right now that Russia wins. Sasha, I'm going to direct this to you, and I agree with you guys' assessment of the fact that they're basically trying to recreate the empire here. If Russia were to win, where would they go next?
Well, a couple months ago, I visited Eastern Europe, particularly Poland, Czech Republic, and what I found there is that people are getting ready for a war with Russia. For example, in Poland, I have a good friend of mine there. His son-in-law, 53 years old, he was called for retrained military duties for 3 months. So he's 53 years old, and he's not alone. There are a lot of people who are going. It's like an Israeli style military retraining and working with the new type of ammunition and weapons and so on. Latvia is the same thing. They are ready for Russian invasion, and they're going through military training, sometimes together with Germans. And so is Poland, and Czech Republic is less so, because Czech Republic is somewhat different. Although they're Slavic nation, but they are mentally, they're more part of Habsburg Empire, and they're not so much scared of Russia, believing that military will help, which I'm not strong believer of that at all. The Article 5, in my opinion, it's a great thing to talk about it, but in reality, I don't believe that it works at all. So that's why when there is a discussion about guarantees for Ukraine, that it will be almost like Article 5 agreements or so, I don't believe it. Strong Ukrainian army, stronger than Russia, well equipped, 21st century army. That's the guarantee of Ukraine, nothing else. And hopefully that's where we are going to. Now, speaking about diplomacy back, in the last couple of days, there is a change in U.S. Diplomacy. After Trump saw, and remember, he likes pictures much more than whatever he may read or listen to somebody. Pictures, that's his strength. So after he saw the military parade of China, he now understands that his policy to restrain China is completely collapsing. There is nothing he can do about China except to go to Emperor Xi and ask for peace and agreement, and same as with Putin, because that is not working. China is not scared about any tariffs from United States. Absolutely not. Also, India now joins China and Russia and other beautiful artists. And so now he is looking at a united anti-Trump, anti-American formation, while he neglects his own strength, which is NATO, and so on, and they're bashing Europeans. Look at what Witkoff said just yesterday, that European, you're good for nothing, and just go away, and he just left. So this is all bring us to a new Well, Trump wants to win. He doesn't like to do losing propositions like peace in Ukraine in what is it, 24 hours, then in 1 month and 3 months, and ultimatums of all kinds. He understands that this is not working. He's not going to pursue something that doesn't bring him a win. So he must concentrate on another way. He's now changed the Ministry of War, and war must be won. He cannot win the war against Russia or China, but he can win war with the help of Israel in the Middle East. This is a juicy object of Trump. Okay, here is Israel, who is much stronger than all these Arab countries put together. So Israel, go there, kill these people, destroy their people, and they are totally on the side of Israel.
Okay,
now,
but
another war which he can win, I'll just finish, is a war inside of United States against immigrants, against the Democrats, the transgenders, whoever they are. That's winnable war, because whatever he can put his armies against Chicago or Los Angeles or so on, nobody can withstand that. So now, from now on, only winning wars, nothing else.
Realistically, guys, there's not going to be a war between China and the United States because
No.
there's geographically, these countries are just too big. I mean, that's all, China's not going to be sending warships over to San Francisco, and we're not going to be sending warships to Shanghai. It's not going to happen. But if you follow, say again,
it was a big mistake for United States to consider that something will never happen. During the Second World War, United States considered that Japan will not attack United States, and then United States encountered a tragedy in Pearl Harbor with a surprise attack, and Chinese ambitions now are pretty much larger than the Japanese during the
but if you use the China 100-year war plan that apparently they have, it's an economic takeover. It's not really a militaristic takeover, is it?
Then why they had that show in Beijing with celebrating the 80 years of their victory in the Second World War and showing those laser guns, ICBMs, and all their weapons, and why they're producing their weapons with such speed, and why they're planning to upgrade their military forces. Actually, Jim, you asked before that a really great question to Sasha, but I want to answer it. I like this alternative scenario in case Russia will win. What's next? Of course, next will be Europe, Poland, Baltic states, and if Russia will be succeeded, then they will advance further to the west, probably to La Manche and to the coast.
And you said
Britain.
Specifically Poland, right? Poland.
But what it's important that in this scenario means that if Russia wins, they've got Ukraine. If Russia wins, they've got Ukraine, and with Ukraine, the Russian army will be really dangerous for the Europe and for the whole world, because Ukraine showed how Ukrainian army can fight. And if Russia wins, they will conscript Ukrainian people to their army. They will get all those technologies which Ukraine developed during this war. And moreover, Ukrainians probably will be so angry on the European countries, on the Western world, because of defeat in this war, that they will have their own desire to support Russia in this war. Okay, if Ukraine lost, that means that Western world left Ukraine. alone in this war, and that means that we have more to do with Russia than with European countries. So it's a really dangerous scenario for the Western world.
I think that Europeans understand very well that Ukraine is integral part of their defense against Russia. They cannot rely on United States for obvious reasons. And Ukraine is today by far the strongest army in Europe. Even Germany, UK, and France, they cannot put united army that would be even a fraction as good as the army, specifically with the experience through some years fighting Russian army. So Europe, this is the only defense.
Yeah, and you're apparently, I'm rephrasing what you're saying. You're saying that if Russia were to beat Ukraine, the Ukrainian army would essentially become the Russian army, right?
Yeah, like it was in Soviet Union when Ukrainians actually were a major part of Soviet army. When Russia said that they, thanks to them, the Allies achieved victory after the Second World War. They just forget to add that victory was paid by millions of lives of Ukrainian soldiers, because Ukrainian front was actually the major battlefield of the Second World War on the eastern part, and Ukrainians were a major part of the Soviet army, and also numerous or even a major of all Soviet commanders, they were Ukrainians, because Ukrainians are really smart in tactics, are really gifted, and Soviet command appreciated that.
I've never heard anybody ask this question before. So, is there what chance is there that Russia did this specifically because they wanted the Ukrainian army?
Yeah,
that would be part of their motivation.
What they're doing, they're recruiting people on the occupied territories to become a part of their army. When they've captured Lugansk, Donetsk in 2014, and then started the full-scale invasion, they conscripted a major part of men there. When they've captured, after the full-scale invasion, the parts of Kherson, Zaporizhia regions, they've conscripted men on that occupied territories to become what Russia is good. Really, they are good in persuading soldiers go strict ahead and die, because on their backs there are another soldiers with guns, and you have a pretty small chance to go straight and maybe not die, or if you turn back, you will die definitely, because there are other Russians with the guns which will kill you if you will not go straight ahead. And that's their tactics, which actually they used during the Second World War. And it's a well-known Soviet tactics, and it worked during the Second World War by making soldiers just go ahead and die by dozens, and they're continuing to use it right now.
There is the impression that one of the reasons the Russians aren't doing well is because of a lack of enthusiasm in their troops. If I could understate that, I don't know. But I mean that. Yes,
it's not about enthusiasm. Actually, it's about money. What's great secret of Russian army and of how they managed to keep such pace of losing people in this war is that they have money to just to buy new recruits to their army. They're paying the sums of money like 10 times higher an average Russian can earn per year by joining the army. and if that guy will die, then his family will receive like millions of rubles, like enormous money, which they've never ever seen in their life, in majority in Russia, and that makes a lot of people just join Russian army and die.
There's a very interesting video. It's in Russian, but I've seen it and many other people. That a mother of 3 sons, 2 of them, the older ones, were already killed in Ukraine, and the third one, he is scared to go to war. So she's saying, "You are bastard, you have to go, so we are not gonna suffer. We need money. Go to pick up your 2 million rubles and go to fight. Don't be bastard."
You're worth more to us dead than alive, essentially, is what she's saying.
Think about your family.
That's right. Go die well.
It looks funny, but actually, it's
I know.
it's a scary thing, because they put money towards the lives of their people, like in industrial industrial scale, and it's making money and dying for money on that war, like a great deal for Russian families.
There are already many cases when Russian soldiers, they get their money, and then next day they immediately surrender to Ukrainians. Others are shooting to their legs, so they cannot fight anymore, but they already got the money, so they will go to the hospital for a few months or so. So they will have money and be alive for a while.
Yeah.
For a while.
One other thing that I should point out about this alternate scenario where Russia conquers Ukraine, even though that it's a horrific alternate scenario, I would also point out, based on history, that it is highly unlikely that that is going to happen. Why? Because when the Soviet army during World War II came back through Ukraine, first when the Germans invaded Ukraine, the Ukrainians welcomed the Germans, the Nazis, as liberators. They were willing to form a separate state and join with Nazi Germany. And then when the Nazis started exterminating the Ukrainians as if they were Untermenschen, well, then the Ukrainians figured out, well, the Germans, if anything, or even, if it possible, are even worse than the Russians. So then what happened was there was a Ukrainian army, General Vlasov's Army of the Damned. And that army not only resisted when the Soviet army came, not only did his army resist the Germans, but also they resisted the Russians when they came back through Ukraine. And that formed the core of a guerrilla resistance from the Ukrainians against Russians, the occupied Russian forces that lasted after World War II. That was a guerrilla war that was not fully suppressed until 1954. And that is not well known in the West at all. There was
1960s, actually.
1960s, seriously?
Almost 20 years in the western part of Ukraine. There were guerrilla war, and Russian soldiers were actually
you just told me something. Yeah, go ahead.
By Ukrainians, and that actually the scenario which Western countries prepared Ukraine for after the Russian full-scale invasion. I agree with you, Jonathan, that it's the alternative scenario which Jim said, that Russia will win is not actually possible, because Ukraine will fight in one way or in another, maybe in guerrilla war, and Russia, and it will not, it will never surrender to Russia. But Western analysts estimated the scenario that Russia will conquer Ukraine like in 2 weeks. And,
2 weeks.
They will take Kyiv in several days, and etc. And Ukrainian army showed, Ukrainian people showed that
they were just looking.
Western analysts just did a great mistake, and that mistake actually was a big mistake for Western countries, because in that point there was a weak point of Russia, and Russia could actually been defeated by increasing military support to Ukraine, by implementing all major sanctions on the time. In that point, Russia was weak, and Russia actually could collapse and stop this war. But now it's pretty harder for them to make stop this war and get back to their swamp.
Sasha?
Jonathan, further to your point about the General Vlasov. First of all, in Ukraine right now, well known the units which are Russian units. They are completely consist of Russian fighters, and they are fighting heroically on a side of Ukraine. And they're very well regarded, and they're doing heroic things. And with General Vlasov, the story is this: it was summer of '42 when Germans were still on advance, and it was a city near Moscow, Rzhev, where Russians lost well over 1 million people for absolutely nothing. And General Vlasov, he was encircled by Germans, and he was asking Russian command if he could retreat and save people who were fighting with him. And the answer was no, just keep fighting until you're dead. So they were encircled by Germans. They were captured on the battlefield. And General Vlasov, he became absolutely against the Soviet system, the Soviet Union, anything, whatever Soviet is, and he actually was able to create a very strong Russian unit. They were almost all Russians, and German supported it, and they were heroically fighting until the end of war, where he was captured and he was killed by Russians in its captivity.
Well named, Army of the Damned.
I would be remiss if I did not ask you, what's your day-to-day life there?
So sorry.
I said, what is your day-to-day life like?
Actually, like in regular life for all Ukrainians, and that's remarkable, because the major part of Ukraine is living the regular life, except you have some inconvenience, like the military checkpoints, when you have to show your documents, and in case you have everything okay with the documents, you can go further. But in general, the restaurants are open, cinemas are open, trading centers are open. A lot of people there, except of the time when Russia is attacking Ukraine, and we have air siren there, and then we have to go to the some kind of bunkers or somewhere like in basements to wait for the.
So generally, people are still just getting up and going to work, huh? Generally.
Yeah. People are working. People are supporting Ukrainian armed forces, like donating, and it's a major movement of Ukraine, because every Ukrainian either has relatives or friends serving in the army, and I've got a lot of friends who are actually serving, and I'm supporting them. I supporting some units which I know, and it's a way for a lot of Ukrainians to work, to support, to pay taxes, actually, in order for Ukrainian economy can work. And of course, Ukrainian economy is still alive thanks to the support from the Western partners, but also that Ukrainian economy is working, Ukrainian industry is working, the trading processes are working, Ukrainian railways are working, people are traveling, but it's a point of inconvenience because no air flights in Ukraine are available, and in order to fly to some other country, you have to go to the neighboring country like Poland or
Right.
Moldova and fly from there. But in general, it's not like during war, like in the Second World War in Great Britain, for instance, when the almost all territory of Great Britain was continuously bombarded. But even during that dark days in British history, British people tried to live their regular life, how it was possible, and Ukrainians are doing the same.
I'm going to ask you, I'm going to end this thing with a hypothetical question here, or more. No, I'm sorry. It's a philosophical question, because we were talking earlier about the fact that Putin is not really responding to what would consider his rational self-interest. And like Jonathan said, that's because we are not figuring it correctly. So I'm fascinated with the Second World War, and I think this might apply to this situation. So the thing is, okay, the Holocaust aside, just put that aside now as ultimate evil. Okay, Hitler, from a militaristic standpoint, if he had ignored Russia and ignored Britain, he basically would have had the entirety of Europe, and that's Germania. And okay, so like you won, right? But these despots, these dictators, they don't know when to quit.
Listen, Hitler, yeah,
that's their problem, actually.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, seriously. I mean, because you're right. If Putin wins, if he were to win, he's going to go on to Poland, and that's because they won't know when to quit. It's like, and what does that say about your mind? Yes, Sasha.
Putin is very skillful of testing the West, how far he can go without any punishment. It started in 2008 with the little war with Georgia. So the war was stopped in a few days, this is 5 days, I think, and he ended up with South Ossetia and Abkhazia, which were annexed to Russia. Was there any punishment for that? Absolutely no. So the next, he annexed Crimea and started war in Donbass in 2014. Was there any punishment for that? No. So then he was emboldened to start the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Was there any punishment for that? Well, there were some sanctions, there were some talk about it. This is unjust war, this is not good war, and so on. Was he determined to stop the war because of that? Absolutely not. And besides, I'm not.
I'm sorry, Sasha, you dropped out there. What was that again? Last thing?
I'm not strong believer in economic sanctions against Russia. I'll tell you why. Jonathan, you're aware that by 1942, during the Second World War, Russia lost 60% of its economy.
Yes.
Had only 40% remaining. What's happened 3 years later? They won the war thanks to, of course, US and England, Lend-Lease, and many other factors. But they won the war. So Putin is not deterred by losing major part of its economy, which is happening right now. Only strong Ukrainian army, period, full stop. That's what will win the war for Ukraine, and peace as well.
Yeah, and also, yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, Hitler. This parallels Putin's behavior, parallels that of Adolf Hitler prior to the beginning of the Second World War. He had a string of diplomatic victories and intimidation and so forth, he was able to gain a string of diplomatic victories and expand Germany's territory. And it wasn't until finally Great Britain and France had enough when Hitler began making demands about Poland. And they drew the line. Then finally they went to war. But by then, Hitler was in no mood to stop. He had made enough military preparations where he felt he could go to war and gain the rest of his objectives. And he almost did. But you can see the same logic, because Putin was rewarded for his aggressions starting in 2008. And then he didn't encounter any resistance, as Sasha pointed out, and therefore he just kept going. And even when he launched that war, he thought it was going to be easy. He miscalculated. He thought instead of stronger NATO alliance, a stronger Ukraine, and many more casualties than he anticipated. He didn't think he was going to lose over 1 million men invading Ukraine.
And I do have to ask you guys too. So you were pointing out about the fact about China's not afraid of the U.S. anymore. Is that because of weak precedent? I mean, just like Sasha, you were talking about the fact that for years he's basically run around with impunity. Putin has, and is China just looking at that and say, well, it's like no one's gonna stop us. We'll just do whatever we want.
It's very unfortunate that all this happening when he became president and started this tariff strategy. Now, tariff strategy, I'm not criticizing that. It's much deeper than scope of our conversation today. But when you start it all simultaneously against all world, that is, even if economically it could work and may work or so on, but you alienate almost all world against United States. And it includes Canada, where I live now. Actually, two countries are most stubborn about this tariffs are Canada and China.
Yeah.
For different reasons, perhaps, but still. And India is now being pushed toward China and Russia and so on. So this is absolutely bizarre development. And with this military parade, China just tells everybody, you are talking about tariffs? Watch this. Where are your tariffs? Bring them in.
Yeah.
And this is an enormous challenge right now.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's like a whole hour has gone by. I don't know if you. I don't even know how long is your average show on the Ukrainian show.
Half hour.
Half hour. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
we covered more in the space of this hour. You have seen pretty much the full range of arguments that we generally cover in all of our regular Ukraine show, Ukraine, Russia, China, and. This should give your viewers a very good idea of the kinds of things that we discuss on our program, and the thing that I think you would agree is most unique about our program is the fact that we incorporate several unique perspectives.
Yeah.
We have, of course, and the part that makes it the most unique is the fact that we have Ivan,
right?
In effect, our war correspondent in Ukraine, in Kiev.
Well, yeah. Also, I want to point out that we have a connection here. We're running video from 3 different countries, and it's generally worked out pretty well. We've had a little bit of an audio problem, but nothing major. And so I want to thank you guys for that. It's like this is the internet, the intertube actually works.
Amazing, but true. Yeah. The wonders of 21st century technology.
Right. Jonathan Lockwood, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll see you again. Ivan Kucherenko, thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck to you, man. It's like I wouldn't want to be in your shoes per se. So, take care of yourself. Sasha Starr, it's a pleasure. I'm also a classical musician too, so it's nice to talk to you.
Oh, we have to talk about music.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
There's a future invitation for you, Sasha.
Yeah, really.
You get to do a solo act.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it a lot. You guys all take care. All right, we'll see you. That's the guys from the Ukraine show: Sasha Starr, Ivan Kucherenko, and Jonathan Lockwood. That's pretty. It sounds like a backhanded insult, but I really don't mean it that way. That was more interesting than I expected it to be. I don't know. I hope you enjoyed it. It's really interesting having Ivan there, actually from Ukraine too. So, at any rate, this is part 2 of our program. We call it the Gymcast. I'm going to talk a few things about the news today that you probably didn't hear anywhere else. And of course, one of my big deals on this program is the UFO situation. And there was a hearing in Congress today about it this morning, chaired by Congresswoman Anna Polina Luna, who's been really onto this sort of thing. The actual name of the hearing, it was titled Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection. As most people, including me, predicted, nothing earth-shattering came out of this. There were a few interesting things, though. And per the title of the hearing, the big deal was whistleblower protection. There are people in Congress, Congresswoman Luna and Burleson, and Senator Burchett from Kentucky. Is it? Forgive me. I think so. Have been really on this thing about the fact that people don't want to come forward because they're literally afraid for their lives. Because David Grush said this during the previous hearing, and he said this on the record about the fact that people have been killed over UAP or what we know as UFO information. And a lot of people don't believe this. And well, I can tell you it's true. One thing that did come out of it is George Knapp, the investigative journalist. He testified, and I think he's been at most of these hearings, but I think this is the first time he's actually testified. I'm not sure. And he brought up something that I've been talking about for quite a while, and that is, how do I know that the UFOs are here and the aliens are here? It's not necessarily American documents. It's documents from other countries. Because remember, specifically Canada and Russia, we don't have anything to do with their security oaths. So those things get leaked out, and they do regularly. We don't have any problem talking about them and say nobody here is going to get arrested for talking about Canadian classified documents, and that's happened regularly. And he brought this up. He brought particularly about the fact that he was led into. He has Russian documents about an incident that I think happened was in 1967 about when UFOs surrounded one of their missile facilities and basically turned all the missiles on. And they gave up trying to figure out of any conventional cause. They just came to the conclusion that it was UFOs because as soon as they left, everything went back to normal. And we've had the same thing happen in Canada. Paul Hellyer, the former defense minister of Canada, before he died, he said that UFOs are here and the aliens are real. And Haim Eshed, who's the former head of the Israeli space program, and yes, they do have one. I don't know if they've ever actually put a person in space, but they've launched plenty of satellites, including one to the moon, and maybe more than one. But he said, this is Haim Eshed from Israel, and he was also the single most prominent astrophysicist he still is. He's still alive. He's in his 80s now. He retired. He was the single most prominent astrophysicist in Israel. He said that not only were the aliens coming here, he said that both Israel and the United States had made formal contact with them. Now, that may be hard to believe, but his pedigree, his credentials are sterling. Same with Paul Hellyer. So, now you've got people really high up on the record. Paul Hellyer said he was he claimed, and most people agree, that he was the single most high up government official on the planet to ever say the UFOs are real. And that's probably true. So that's the thing. It's not just us. In the meantime, Congresswoman Luna, she's trying to get the laws changed so that more and more people come forward or feel like they can come forward with impunity because supposedly these laws are already in existence, but people are still scared to death. They don't want to come forward. So they're she's trying to get more people to come on the record saying that we have these crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. So here's the deal, folks. If we didn't have them, why would it be such a big deal? Why would the military be so hell bent on ruining people's careers and supposedly even killing people for talking about it if it wasn't true, right? So that's my job. The way I look at it, I'm the guy who gets to string the speculation over one more notch. They're not going to do that. And even George Knapp said today during the hearing, he said his job wasn't necessarily to believe in aliens. He was trying to follow the paper trail of government obfuscation, and it's dense and vast, as he points out. He's been doing this since 1987. So yeah, so now, like I said, nothing earth shattering, nothing really new, but still more basically, if you want it, confirmation of what's going on, relatively speaking. And speaking of that, Avi Loeb, head of the astronomy department at Harvard University, he's been going on and on about this supposed comet that's come into the solar system called 3I Atlas. And it is supposedly the third interstellar object that's ever been tracked or recorded coming into our solar system, interstellar being from outside of the solar system. It's the third interloper. You probably remember. I didn't remember. I had to look up the second one because it was pretty unremarkable. The first one was this thing called Oumuamua, which a lot of people still think might have been an actual alien drone sent here to collect information, because that acted really weird. And there's some things about its orbit around the sun that can't be explained. Specifically, that it sped up on its own. It appeared to speed up on its own power, which comets do not do. And the thing about this 3I Atlas thing that's unusual is that Loeb says they've now figured out that it's generating its own light. It's not reflecting light as comets normally do. There's light coming from inside of it, and that's lighting it up. So who knows? Loeb seems quite convinced this is an alien probe. He thinks that based on everything they've seen so far, it is not a natural object. There are people who disagree with them. I should point that out. But the problem with this whole issue is that there's some people who just don't want to believe it, and this is my thing of the entire time. It's like they don't want to believe it either for professional reasons, because believing in the fact that aliens are coming here and that their spacecraft blows 30 years of their research out of the water. And there's people, the vast majority of people, who are too afraid to admit it. They don't want to come to terms with the fact that not just that there's beings on other planets, but that they're coming here. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's beings on other planets and they're coming here. I call them people. It's like, what the hell, most of them seem to be humanoid in nature. In other words, they have 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, eyes. I'm starting to wonder if this is a template across, if not the universe, at least our corner of the galaxy. And if you're talking about the fact that maybe DNA has been flying around on comets for millennia, well, that could be I've had friends tell me, well, no, it's obvious that aliens would not look like us. And at your first glance, you think, well, that's true. Life would develop independently all over the place based on current conditions, and there would be no similarity. But you stop to think about the fact that, first of all, well, everything in the universe, we're still dealing with the same elements. Things on Proxima Centauri are pretty much the same way they are here. I don't know if the atmosphere is the same. They have gravity, they have that, and then the fact that that we know that for a fact that the comets have been carrying DNA all over the place, and on Earth, one of your primary proofs of that would be the octopus. It's like, have you seen these things? It's not just that they look weird. they have a DNA that's completely different than any other animal on the planet. It's like it appears that they are aliens, that they were seeded here either accidentally or deliberately or whatever, but they do not seem to be from here. And also they're smart as fuck too. There's that also. And they have 8 tentacles, and they live underneath they live there with SpongeBob. I'm just a guy amusing myself on the inner tube TV. Yeah. So anyway, this 3i Atlas thing is going to come closest to Earth, I think, in next month, if I'm right. And they're trying to send out, or they've sent out, there's a probe we've sent to Jupiter to take some pictures that I don't know if they actually succeed in this, but astronomers are trying to get NASA to redirect the thing to go toward this object, this 3i Atlas comet, and take some photos. They're trying to get them to do that. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if it has happened. I don't know, but apparently that's possible. So it's not going to be close to Earth either. I think 150 million miles or something like that. But at any rate, that's the closest it's going to be. So, and finally, I'm going to bring this up too, because it touches on everything I'm touching on. Richard Dolan, the preeminent UFO researcher in America now, he just came out on a podcast recently. He said he's saying the same thing I've been saying for months, if not a couple of years now, and that is, at this point, it doesn't matter what evidence or proof anyone would produce, nobody would believe it, and that's the way I look at it too. I was listening to a podcast with Richard Doty. Now, Richard Doty is a guy who used to work in counterintelligence for the CIA. He's retired. He admits that one of his jobs was to excuse me was to spread UFO disinformation to keep people off the trail of legitimate classified Air Force projects that we were developing. So he admits this. Now, no one knows. So he says he's retired. The guy he's a not confirmed and also admitted liar. So nobody knows whether you should believe this stuff or not, what he says, but he says that one of the things some of the podcasters asked him, tell me something that no one's ever heard. He said, yeah, I'll tell you something. He said there was this guy living in a trailer out in the middle of nowhere, next to some Air Force base. This is in New Mexico or something. He's literally living alone in a trailer out in the woods, and and supposedly UFOs land in his yard, and humanoid beings walk out, and he takes pictures of them. And this guy apparently, Doty said, I saw the photos. I actually went to the guy's trailer, me and another guy from the CIA. We went there. We saw the pictures. He said they were so startling, they looked fake. But this was in the 1960s or something like this, or 70s, when it was hard to fake photos. And you have to understand this. It's really easy now, which is the reason no one believes any photographic evidence anymore, because between AI and CGI, man, you can pretty much get anything and it looks perfect. But in the 1960s and 70s, it was really difficult to fake photos. It really was, at least convincingly. There was the double exposure, and that was about it. And you could go into a dark room. I mean, I've said this about the JFK assassination. There's a famous picture of Lee Harvey Oswald holding up a newspaper and his rifle, and that picture's fake. But the thing is, in 1963, the only organizations that had the resources to convincingly fake photos like that were Hollywood movie studios and the U.S. government. That was it. You couldn't do it. You couldn't go down to the drugstore and have them dummy up a picture. That didn't happen. And no one, you couldn't. I mean, you could do it, but it would look bad. But so and he's talking about, this was in the 1970s. So they knew the photos weren't fake. They knew that. He said there's literally pictures of little humanoid gray aliens coming out of a spacecraft, and right in front of them, like 20 feet away, and the guy's taking pictures. So now, but the thing is, does Doty have the pictures? No. Should I believe him? I have no idea. I don't. It's like, I tendency to I discount that stuff because if you're going to rely on that, you're kind of screwed. Like I said, the guy's an admitted liar. I mean, he lied for a living. That was part of his job. So I don't know if he's still doing it or not. I have no idea. Okay, so tomorrow night we're off. I'm going to the assisted living facility, and they're going to have their fall festival. My mother's going to go and run around and tell people what to do. She's 101. She's allowed. Thursday, Tim Conway is going to be here. He's our old friend from Hustler Magazine from our Los Angeles days, and we'll have a good time talking to him. He always had a good story stuck in him somewhere. I got to get it out. And tomorrow night when we're off, we're going to rerun the show from last Wednesday, September 2nd, with Wayne Morrow, the CEO of the John Birch Society. That's what we're going to show tomorrow night. And I don't know what's coming up on Monday. I still don't know, but we'll have something. We'll figure it out. That's what we do. We're flying by the seat of our pants, so folks. That's what I'm sure you want to know that. But yeah, and my pants are pretty big. And I'm getting a haircut tomorrow before I see my mother. I got to get rid of this. This is just terrible. I'm watching myself on the Ukraine interview. Man, just look awful. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are. Good night to you, wherever you may be. I'm Jim Peters. We won't see you tomorrow night, but we'll see you on Thursday. Take care, everybody. Looking forward.